Hi, welcome back to Library Sherry. So last week we talked about some situations that could cause extended turnaround time in hematology department. This week, let's talk about what are those situations in chemistry. I'm gonna break this video into three parts. One part for processing, one part for analyzing, and one part for resulting each of this major part during a whole entire process of this specimen could having some specific situations causing some extended turnaround time. Start with processing. So chemistry is the only department that would need some specimens to be clotted first. So when you give us the patient blood, department like hematology, those kind of places, they can use the whole blood, or coag, sometimes they use plasma, but those spun down only takes like 5 minutes or even 3 minutes. None of this process would need a specimen to be pre-clotted and then extract the top serum of it. Chemistry is the only department need this process. And unfortunately, the clotting process is a lot slower than you think. Typically, when you get a cut on your skin or when you go to draw blood, you would think, oh, it only takes like 20-30 seconds for the spot to be like completely clotting up. But that's not the situation when you have a tube of blood. Although some of the blood would be clotting within 5 minutes, but that's not a normal situation. And the standard procedure for most of the labs is actually once they receive a blood in red top or SST, which would be looks like a golden cap, those tubes will be sitting on their counter for a minimum of 15 minutes before they even put the blood in the centrifuge. So that would add some extra time compared to the green top that you would use, which is a tube type that allow us to use plasma for analyze. Well, most of the time, I would say if you are not trying to do some special hormone drug level test, a green top would be a better choice. So if you go to check the test catalog in your hospital, if you see a test that is available both in SST and a green top, a green top would actually giving you a shorter turnaround time. You just have to make sure when you do that later on, you won't be thinking about adding on some tests that only be able to done on the red top or SST. So that's one of the situation. And another one is the add-ons. So when you get a add-on to us, we are not just gonna be grabbing the tube from the fridge and then be like, oh, okay, we're gonna start to test it. In fact, we need to warm it up first. And that warming up process, if your hospital doesn't have a automated tracking system, everything is done by manual, most likely we'll check the tube temperature around 15 to 20 minutes. And if it's warm enough, we'll grab it and then feel it in our hand. If it doesn't feel like extremely cold, it's somewhat room temperature, we might testing it already. But if we having a automated track, most of the track, they will set a automatic 30 minutes timer before it's even attempt to retesting that blood. So when you do the add-ons, you are expecting a 30 minutes time just for that sample to be warmed up before it goes onto the analyzer for testing. And in this process, another thing is the short sample. It could be discovered when they first being received at the receiving bench, or it would be discovered once it's hitting on the analyzer and the probe actually goes in to sense the level of the liquid. If it's right after the processing bench, they will have to use special like a short simple cup and let it sit on top of the cup and using that for censoring, and that will take some manual steps. But sometimes if they don't do that, they might give it to us directly from the processing bench and we will try to find a short sample cup or do something with it, but it takes a few extra steps. The worst part is if it looks kind of somewhat okay and then they put it on the analyzer and then this short sample was sensed by the probe, and that's the time will cause a longer time of delay. Not gonna be like a super long for an hour, but at least what happens is the analyzer will try to sense the sample and it didn't sense a right signal. It's either the liquid level is too low or it's clotted probe because the probe is hitting on the gel level or some whatever things happen. So in that situation, Normally, the analyzer will try it again and then giving us error message, and then we go back and we do all the manual step trying to figure out a way to make this sample to be analyzed. Sorry, my hair get onto the way. Okay, let's keep going. This is the last one in the processing step. If you are ordering this sample with some special chemistry test, what I mean by that is certain drug levels or hormone levels, they might not be in the routine chemistry test. And in those kind of cases, we have separate set of analyzers need to do that and separate set of people to do that. The normal process would be the sample going to the routine chemistry testing first, and then it will be sent over to the special chemistry after all the routine tests is done. So those kind of examples are more oftenly to be the special antigen or antibody levels that you ordered, or some special hormone or pre-hormones such as procalcitonin, and maybe sometimes some special drug levels like methotrexate. And all of this above are what can happen to a specimen processing part to cause you having a longer turnaround time. And now let's get into the analyzing part. During the analyzing, I think one of the things everybody understands is dilution, because sometimes when you see your patient is very ill, you are expecting some abnormal result, and that's the time when dilution comes in, and then we have to keep running and running and running. So each time we try a higher dilution, that's a complete new round of chemistry reaction, and that's simply consuming time. There is one thing a lot of people probably don't know is supercentrifuge. When you give us a super lipemic sample, just like the ones that it will cause issues in hematology, it also causes issue in chemistry too. A lot of tests, they reading the color changes. If it's super lipemic, that white existence in the plasma or the serum, it will block the color reading. So in that case, we need to put them in a supercentrifuge, which is just a higher speed of the centrifuge, but it takes a longer time, and we need to do those manual steps super carefully with like a tiny little glass tip of pipette, and super easy to break and causing hazard. So those kind of steps, we take extra precautions and trying to spin it down with a higher speed, longer time, just to get the fat inside the plasma or serum to be separated so we can test it. And now let's come to the special test. Things like TSH, HCG, troponin, those kind of tests just taking longer. I'm sorry. I know you are in a hurry, but those tests are taking longer. A lot of times, if you are really need to know some result, in this kind of case, unfortunately, we can't do anything to speed it up, and the only thing we can help you is probably giving you a approximate turnaround time, but that is only if we go to the analyzer and then read the countdown on the analyzer and give you a minute, but the actual time when you receive the result, it might still end up being like we need another round of dilution, or maybe this result having some reading errors, and that time that we read to you from analyzer may not be actually the time you will be just going to the Epic and refresh and be seeing a number or result in there. So you can call and we can give you a number, but that's not a 100% promise. We're just trying to help. That's all what it is. And last, there are a couple special things I need to tell you. Tests like FFN or anything you order on the analyzer, such as the gas chromatography, those kind of tests, either we don't do them that often on a day-to-day basis. So what happens is once you order it, everything we do will be start from absolute blank zero. Sometimes it need to be start from the fresh QC. Sometimes it's even need to start from fresh calibration. So in those kind of situations, yes, it will take a longer time. Well, fortunately, FFN are point of care. So normally, even adding up with all these preparation steps, it won't take too long. It's gonna be like 30 minutes in total of your turnaround time. But stuff like gas chromatography or liquid phase, those kind of things first. Your hospital might not even have this analyzer, so in that case, you can just no worries about this. But if your hospital does have that analyzer and you order that kind of test, expecting a 2 hours plus of turnaround time, because those kind of things, we start from warming the analyzer up. and that give you the result. Yeah, it is that law. And now let's come into the resulting part. And if you're feeling weird about this picture, you're not crazy. I just had to switch over my camera because it started to out focus a little bit. Let's get into the resulting part. Sorry, it's a little bit jump around. So in this resulting part, as you can imagine, like it's the only thing can make us holding on the result without giving to you at this point is if we think this result got some issues or we need to take a deeper look into it. So what happens in this step is, like in today's hospital system, it doesn't matter if you're using Sunquest or Epic or any other things out on the market. All this system having a built-in function to tracking the patient's past history. And if certain numbers just all of a sudden looks outrageous weird, like this patient never ever got this level or something like that, it will give us a little bit of triangle and saying precautions, like this might be a contamination, or precautions, this is a weird result, it never happened. In those kind of cases, we would stop, and then of course the first thing we're gonna do is stare at the sample, see if it's anything abnormal. If not, we typically would try to test it again. And that's when you receive the result and it's having a disclaimer saying we already double tested it and this is what we get, and we couldn't find any other things that could cause in it. This like pre-analytically everything looks fine and the sample looks fine, and all the clarity, all the viscosity, all the other result in the sample match, and just this one particular result is all of a sudden becomes abnormal and weird compared to this patient's history profile. You would get this kind of disclaimer from us, and that means we already spent time to retesting it and confirming this is all we get. The other thing could happen on this step is if we get a extreme critical. So normal critical, things like if we get a critical high lactic acid, critical high glucose, those kind of things, these are not things we go for retesting them. Those are the things we either already did, like dilutions, or like we will be looking at the patient's profile being like, oh, this patient was coming in because is acidosis from a uncontrolled diabetes or whatever. Those kind of situations, we'll let the critical result go, and even it's super crazily high. And that's not the reason we go to recheck and going crazy about it. The time it does make us stop the heartbeat for a second and then go to check it and questioning the sample is actually when this result doesn't look like coming from a person that should be alive. So one of the example is some potassium levels. We occasionally would get the samples that having a potassium level of 9 point something, 10 point something. That is not coming from a alive human being, okay? If this sample is not coming from the morgue, it's coming from a ER, we will be looking at it, and then that's the time we'll be like trying to first retest it and make sure it's not just getting onto a computer glitch or a bad reaction chips that just getting a weird result. That's the time we actually questioning if this sample was coming from the wrong tube, if it was a contamination or any other situation that could happen to cause this sample that literally incompatible with life. That's the time we'll do it. And that's also the time, very likely, if our repeated result is still super abnormal, you will receive a redraw or recollect request. We would be stating the reason of why this redraw happens. You just need to like clicking around, find the reason, stay under it. I mean, a lot of people doesn't bother to know it. A lot of people just be like, redraw, okay, I'll just go redraw it. But if you do bother about it, there is things you can click around to find it out. I mean, of course, you can call. It just when we receive the call, nobody likes it because we know you can have a place to find the reason of the redraw. We are forced to write down the reason before we send it for redraw. It's not like we can just click a button saying, I don't like this sample, go for redraw, and without putting a reason. We are forced to do that. And the last thing a lot of people doesn't know about this is when you order a test panel, like a CMP, because this kind of panel is not just including the quick turnaround test like the electrolyte, it also including stuff like the liver enzyme. If you got a high liver enzyme result and that thing's still on the round of dilutions, in this kind of situations, you will not receive any single result all the way until we finish the last bit of the dilution on the highest enzyme result in this entire panel. So when that happens, one of the things you can do is actually give us a call or give the customer service a call, asking them to transfer the phone call, whatever those kind of things that you could do, but give us a call. In this kind of situation, we already have your result for the electrolytes part, so we can read you the result, yeah, but you're not going to see any result cross over to your end all the way until everything is finished on that entire panel, which is unfortunately very bad. And I don't think I've heard any hospital system allows like partial result to be going over first in this kind of situation. That's unfortunately, but that's for safety reasons, because sometimes what happens is if you let partial result go over and then turns out whatever you are diluting later on to be a clearly contaminated result, well, that means whatever you receive need to be now pulled back, and then everybody need to fill in all those safety forms. And so those kind of things are built in for a safety reasons. I know you might want to complain, but it exists for a good reason. And that is the major three parts of what could cause a longer turnaround time or a delayed result in chemistry. And the very end of this video, there's something I need to mention is the broken analyzer. You cannot believe how often we get into a mechanical error in this department. One of the things I hate that nobody told me about when I was back in school is nobody ever said you need to be a halfway mechanical engineer in this department, because you will always, for guarantee, something broken in this department. It's gonna be either one probe is not really aligning well, another bottle of reagent is getting jammed with the cap, or your like disposal line is clogged, or the sample tracking line is not moving, the belt is stuck, the lubricant is running out, the pressure generator sensor all just fail, or the temperature going out range, or the humidity is going weird. It's just every single thing you can think about. Our analyzers get into all this error message for mechanical reasons more often than your car in the winter. So in that kind of situation, if unfortunately your sample was in middle of testing, that result, that whole entire front process is vanished, and we need to start fresh from testing the sample again and pray to the God that we still have enough sample in whatever left. So a pro tip for you, whatever the blood you draw and send to us, fill it up, fill to the line that is allowed to be held in that container. Your patient is not going to have anemia just from that couple extra ml of blood. Make sure you send us the maximum allowed amount of blood in that tube, as full as you can. That way you can do your add-ons later on without hesitating, and we can do the dilutions and retest without bothering you and telling you we don't have enough sample and go to poke the patient again. That's just one of the things I need to specially mention in chemistry, because this department is also the department has the most of the add-on request. A lot of labs, we even set up a special position just for processing all this paperwork. Thank you for watching. I know I've been yapping for a long time, and next week we're gonna keep going to the next department talking about what can cause some extra time before you get your result. This is Lab Rat Sherry. I'll see you in the next episode.